Everybody, we're moving on to chapter 5, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. Harry spun faster and faster, elbows tucked tightly to his sides, blurred fireplaces flashing past him, until he started to feel sick and closed his eyes. Then, when at last he felt himself slowing down, he threw out his hands and brought himself to a halt, in time to prevent himself falling face forward out of the Weasley's kitchen fire. "Did he eat it?" said Fred excitedly, holding out a hand to pull Harry to his feet. "Yeah," said Harry, straightening up. "What was it?" "Tongue toffee," said Fred brightly. "George and I invented them. We've been looking for someone to test them on all summer." The tiny kitchen exploded with laughter. Harry looked around and saw that Ron and George were sitting at the scrubbed wooden table with two red-haired people Harry had never seen before, though he knew immediately who they must be. Bill and Charlie, the two eldest Weasley brothers, "How are you doing, Harry?" said the nearer of the two, grinning at him and holding out a large hand, which Harry shook, feeling calluses and blisters under his fingers. This had to be Charlie, who worked with the dragons in Romania. Charlie was built like the twins, shorter and stockier than Percy and Ron, who were both long and lanky. He had a broad, good-natured face, which was weather-beaten and so freckled that he looked almost tanned. His arms were muscly, and one of them had a large, shiny burn on it. Bill got to his feet, smiling, and also shook Harry's hand. Bill came as something of a surprise. Harry knew that he worked for the Wizarding Bank, Gringotts, that he had been head boy of Hogwarts, and had always imagined Bill to be an older version of Percy, fussy about rule-breaking and fond of bossing everyone around. However, Bill was, there was no other word for it, cool. He was tall, with long hair that he had tied back in a ponytail. He was wearing earrings with what looked like a fang dangling from it. His clothes would not have looked out of place at a rock concert, except that Harry recognized his boots to be made, not of leather, but of dragon hide. Before any of them could say anything else, there was a faint popping noise, and Mr. Weasley appeared out of thin air at George's shoulder. He was looking angrier than Harry had ever seen him. "That wasn't funny, Fred," he shouted. "What on earth did you give that Muggle boy?" "I didn't give him anything," said Fred, with another evil grin. "I just dropped it. It was his fault that he went and ate it. I never told him to." "You dropped it on purpose," roared Mr. Weasley. "You knew he'd eat it. You knew he was on a diet." "How big did his tongue get?" George asked eagerly. Sorry, friends, I'm just opening a yogurt drink. That's what happens when you're working from home. Hey, everybody. "How big did his tongue get?" George asked eagerly. "It was 4 foot long before his parents would let me shrink it." Harry and the Weasleys roared with laughter again. "It isn't funny," Mr. Weasley shouted. "That sort of behaviour seriously undermines wizard-muggle relations. I spent half my life campaigning against the mistreatment of muggles, and my own sons." "We didn't give it to him because he's a muggle," said Fred indignantly. "No, we gave it to him because he's a great bullying git," said George. "Isn't he, Harry?" "Yeah, he is, Mr. Weasley," said Harry earnestly. "That's not the point," raged Mr. Weasley. "You wait until I tell your mother." "Tell me what?" said a voice behind them. Mrs. Weasley had just entered the kitchen. She was a short, plump woman with a very kind face, though her eyes were presently narrowed with suspicion. "Oh, hello, Harry dear," she said, spotting him and smiling. Then her eyes snapped back to her husband. "Tell me what, Arthur?" Mr. Weasley hesitated. Harry could tell that however angry he was with Fred and George, he hadn't really intended to tell Mrs. Weasley what had happened. There was a silence while Mr. Weasley eyed his wife nervously. Then 2 girls appeared in the kitchen doorway behind Mrs. Weasley. One, with very bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth, was Harry and Ron's friend, Hermione Granger. The other was a small red-haired, who was small and red-haired, was Ron's younger sister, Ginny. Both of them smiled at Harry, who grinned back, which made Ginny go scarlet. She had been very taken with Harry ever since his first visit to the Burrow. "Tell me what, Arthur?" Mrs. Weasley repeated in a dangerous sort of voice. "It's nothing, Molly," mumbled Mr. Weasley. "Fred and George just—" "But I've had words with them." "What have they done this time?" said Mrs. Weasley. "If it's got anything to do with Weasley's wizard wheezes." "Why don't you show Harry where he's sleeping, Ron?" said Hermione from the doorway. "He knows where he's sleeping," said Ron. "In my bedroom. He slept there last—" "We can all go," said Hermione pointedly. "Oh," said Ron, cottoning on. "Right. Yeah, we'll come too," said George. "You stay where you are," snarled Mrs. Weasley. Harry and Ron edged out of the kitchen, and they, Hermione and Ginny, set off along the narrow hallway and up the rickety staircase that zigzagged through the house to the upper stories. "What are Weasley's wizarding wheezes?" Harry asked as they climbed. Ron and Ginny both laughed, although Hermione didn't. Mum found the sack of order forms when she was cleaning Fred and George's room, said Ron quietly. "Great long price lists of stuff they've invented. Joke stuff, you know. Fake wands and trick sweets. Loads of stuff. It was brilliant. I never knew that they were inventing all that. We've been hearing explosions out of their room for ages, but we never thought they were actually making things," said Ginny. "We thought they would just liked the noise. Only most of the stuff, well, all of it really, was a bit dangerous," said Ron. "And you know, they were planning to sell it at Hogwarts to make some money, and Mum went mad at them, told them that they weren't allowed to make any more of it, and burnt all the order forms. She's furious at them anyway. They didn't get as many owls as she'd expected. Owls were ordinary wizarding levels, and the examinations Hogwarts students took at the age of 15. And then there was this big row," said Ginny, "because Mum wants them to go into the Ministry of Magic like Dad, and they told her that all they want to do is open a joke shop." Just then, a door on the second landing opened, and a face poked out wearing horn-rimmed glasses and a very annoyed expression. "Hi, Percy," said Harry. "Oh, hello, Harry," said Percy. "I was wondering who was making all the noise. I'm trying to work in here, you know. I've got a report to finish for the office, and it's rather difficult to concentrate when people keep thundering up and down the stairs." "We're not thundering," said Ron irritably. "We're walking. Sorry if we've disturbed the top-secret workings of the Ministry of Magic." "What are you working on?" said Harry. "A report for the Department of International Magical Cooperation," said Percy smugly. "We're trying to standardize cauldron thickness. Some of these foreign imports are just a shade too thin. Leakages have been increasing at a rate of almost 3% a year." "That'll change the world, that report will," said Ron. "Front page of the Daily Prophet, I expect. Cauldron leaks." Percy went slightly pink. "You might sneer, Ron," he said heatedly, "but unless some sort of international law is imposed, we might well find the market flooded with flimsy, shallow-bottomed products, which seriously endanger—" Yeah, all right," said Ron, and he started off upstairs again. Percy slammed his bedroom door shut. As Harry, Hermione, and Ginny followed Ron up 3 more flights of stairs, shouts from the kitchen below echoed up to them. It sounded as though Mr. Weasley had finally told Mrs. Weasley about the toffees. The door at the top of the house where Ron slept, the room at the top of the house, I'm sorry, boys and girls, the room at the top of the house where Ron slept looked much as it had done the last time that Harry had come to stay. The same posters of Ron's favorite Quidditch team, the Chudley Cannons, were whirling and waving on the walls and sloping ceiling, and the fish tank on the windowsill which had previously held frog spawn, now contained one extremely large frog. Ron's old rat, Scabbers, was here no more, but instead there was a tiny grey owl that had delivered Ron's letter to Harry in Privet Drive. It was hopping up and down in a small cage and twittering madly. "Shut up, pig," said Ron, edging his way between two of the four beds that had been squeezed into the room. "Fred and George are in here with us because Bill and Charlie are in their room," he told Harry. "Percy gets to keep his room all to himself because he's got work." Why are you calling that owl pig?" Harry asked Ron. "Because he's being stupid," said Ginny. "Its proper name is Pigwidgeon. Yeah. "And that's not a stupid name at all," said Ron sarcastically. "Ginny named him," he explained to Harry. "She reckons it's sweet, and I tried to change it, but it was too late. He won't answer to anything else, so now he's Pig. I've got to keep him up here because he annoys Errol and Hermes. He annoys me too, come to that." Pigwidgeon zoomed happily around his cage, hooting shrilly. Harry knew Ron too well to take him seriously. He had moaned continually about his rat Scabbers, but had been most upset when Hermione's cat Crookshanks appeared to have eaten him. "Where's Crookshanks?" Harry asked Hermione now. "Out in the garden, I expect," she said. "He likes chasing gnomes. He's never seen any before." "Percy's enjoying work, then," said Harry, sitting down on one of the beds and watching the Chudley cannon zooming in and out of the posters on the ceiling. "Enjoying it?" said Ron darkly. "I don't reckon he'd come home if Dad didn't make him. He's obsessed. Just don't get him on to the subject of his boss. According to Mr. Crouch, as I was saying to Mr. Crouch is of the opinion. Mr. Crouch was telling me they'll be announcing their engagement any day now." "Harry had a good summer. Have you had a good summer, Harry?" said Hermione. "Did you get our food parcels and everything?" "Yeah." "Thanks a lot," said Harry. "They saved my life, those cakes." "And have you heard from—" Ron began, but at a look from Hermione, he fell silent. Harry knew that Ron had been about to ask about Sirius. Ron and Hermione had been so deeply involved in helping Sirius escape from the Ministry of Magic that they were almost as concerned about Harry's godfather as he was. However, discussing him in front of Ginny was a bad idea. Nobody but themselves and Professor Dumbledore knew about how Sirius had escaped and believed in his innocence. "I think they've stopped arguing," said Hermione, to cover the awkward moment, because Ginny was looking curiously from Ron to Harry. "Shall we go down and help your mum with dinner?" "Yeah, all right," said Ron. The four of them left Ron's room and went back downstairs to find Mrs. Weasley alone in the kitchen, looking extremely bad-tempered. "We're eating out in the garden," she said, when they came in. "There's just not enough room for 11 people in here." "Could you take the plates outside, girls? Bill and Charlie are setting up the tables. Knives and forks, please, you two," she said to Ron and Harry, pointing her wand a little more vigorously than she had intended at a pile of potatoes in the sink, which shot out of their skins so fast that they ricocheted off the walls and ceilings. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she snapped, now directing her wand at a dustpan, which hopped off the side and started skating across the floor, scooping up the potatoes. "Those two," she burst out savagely, now pulling pots and pans out of the cupboard, and Harry knew that she meant Fred and George. "I don't know what's going to happen to them. I really don't. No ambition, unless you count making as much trouble as they possibly can." She slammed a large so cool. I love these illustrations. They're just beautiful. She slammed a large copper saucepan down on the kitchen table and began to wave her wand around inside it. A creamy sauce poured from the wand tip as she stirred. And I think we'll stop there for today. And I'll see you again soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.